yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned I kind of preceded you getting into the Bolt EV, Steve, but I think your experience is also valuable because I kind of get the whole, well, you live in California, so your experience doesn't apply. And it's like, well, yeah, but there are people on the East Coast and New York and Midwest. So it's nice to have people with different experiences. Um, and as long as we can kind of all come from that point of they're being true and honest to their experiences. So we have to kind of defer to what people say, what they experience in their region.
It's kind of, it really, to me, it's just the next phase of, Tesla's has to now step in, right? It's becoming, with this limited pilot that we've had, especially over here. I know you've been to the site up in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
But it's becoming now a public charge point operator. So we've got this a lot of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on through, on the ground stuff that we've seen. I'll put the video back up super quick. But this was, one of a couple of successful sessions. I think I've been to 5 sites now of the Magic Dock, and we've had about a 40% success rate. So this was about as good as it got. I think we maybe got up to 46 kilowatts. And obviously this is part of the 800 volt limitation, although I think in theory we're supposed to be able to get close to 100. Yeah. But in any case, this is as good as we've had with Magic Dock. The location was Brewster, New York. It's nothing really around it. There's not an equivalent site that I could have used. So that's about as good as we've had on Magic Dock. But we're getting a lot of around, look at the PlugShare locations and some of the Magic Dock places. And, some of the commentary has been that this is a panacea. It's kind of going to solve everything. Thank goodness Tesla's involved. And obviously, there's some elements of that with the location for a start. Some of these are in locations that there simply aren't. As I say, Brewster is not many other options that we could have gone to down there. So that's a good location to have if it was a full power site that we could use at triple-digit fast charging. This is one of the ones that has failed us a few times over up in Fredonia. Constant kind of errors out. You can see there constant errors coming up. It just wouldn't be able to get it to start. And this was after a successful session further across in Batavia, New York. So I've got this whole kind of and again, this is something that has happened over several months here. It's a pilot, so this is the whole point of this shaking out. But there's a video I'd love to make if I thought it was possible, of a Tesla only road trip, right? Me using the Magic Dock across. It would be a long and arduous journey, but it's possible. It's something we can do now on that route of limited Magic Docks. But it's a lot of the complaints against it and the things that I've been seeing across PlugShare have been very reminiscent of the arguments made against the public charge point operators. So low power, short cables, suboptimal layout. No pull through. App had the reset a few times. Had to try 2 or 3 posts. And in the public space, for an Electrify America or an EV Go, this is cause for utter destruction. This is the end of the world. They can't be used for anything to road trip. As I can't road trip on CCS apparently, and I somehow just did 3,000 miles. So I'm confused as to how that happened, but here I am alive to tell the tale. Video
but must have been a tow truck.
It was pretty awful. Yeah, I must have got gas somewhere along the way. So I think that the takeaway there, neither of these sessions were successful. The one in Brewster was good and helped me on my way. So fair, it's a nice option to have that one. But it kind of starts to speak to this story of some of the comments here. Just reliability. So slapping a new plug on something with bad hardware or software doesn't fix it. Now, we don't say that Tesla has bad software, but there's clearly some limitations that we've already got here, and I'm not seeing the benefit of it as yet. Mark says doesn't think it'll be as reliable. That's what we're seeing on PlugShare. A lot of these Magic Dock sites have the ratings starting to fall, or complaints, or just all of these things that are so common. They register in my head because I've heard them all about Electrify America, EV Go, a lot of the mainstream charge point operators that just are under the microscope all the time. And this is what comes of having 10, 20, 30 different automakers use your network, not necessarily have the validation in place, have to have a live experiment running across New York where people can come and, test it out for you. This is just the reality of being a public operator, I think.
Well, and I think so. There's one thing though that I would say that we would want to address in this realm of reliability, right? Well, actually, scratch that. There's a bunch of things. I hope you have at least some commenters from Europe, because in particular, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, there are issues in Europe as well. And that's a CCS V3 supercharger, right? And so to your point, it looks like Hyundai and probably Kia anticipated in Europe, and that's why they're charging at 100 kilowatt. Where if I hazard a guess, it's that the EGMP cars in the United States at the time that they were developed, they knew that the only 500 volt public chargers were 50 kilowatt. So why program it to charge faster than that? It's pointless to do so. Tesla, kind of threw them for a loop when they released the Magic Dock, because now all of a sudden you have a 500 amp, 480 or 500 volt. And actually, sorry, the Magic Dock is restricted to 350 amps. So it's not the true CCS 500 amp plug, but still, that's significantly more than 50 kilowatts of power. So I think Hyundai set up their power module to process 50 kilowatts of power off of 400 volt systems. That was their mindset, and at least in North America. But you go to Europe, it should be closer to 100, and that maybe is the limitation for their internals. It seems to make sense to me. But then there's still issues with compatibility and interoperability. So even though that's pure CCS, right? Same CCS plug, everything else, Hyundai Ioniq owners are still having issues on the superchargers in Europe. So there's definitely something to me that's going on beyond that, and that's speaking to your point about the reliability issues. But one thing I don't think gets talked about enough with the public chargers versus the superchargers there's a really huge potential or opportunity, if you want to be someone who's spreading misinformation, to self-sabotage on public chargers, because there's credit card payment issues, because there's app issues, because the way you're interfacing with the chargers is very different than the way you interface with them with a Tesla. You don't set up the payment app with a Tesla. You don't set up any of that other than entering your payment information. So when you plug your car in, if you're driving a Model 3, Model S, whatever, you plug your car in at a supercharger, it works. There's no point for you to screw it up as the driver. Not in the setup, not in the app. Magic Dock is different. There's an app. It took me an additional 2 minutes to get that charger started because I had to validate my payment in the app. Even though I thought I had already validated it, the app didn't take it. So then I had to re-enter it again. Like you said, these are issues that people are complaining about with the public chargers, but are now being applied to the superchargers. And so that user error, that is one thing that any fully integrated charging system is going to eliminate, the potential for user error. And that's based on what I've seen. I won't say it's a majority of the failures in the public charging infrastructure, but it is a large enough percentage that I don't think that we're getting an accurate representation of how reliable the public chargers actually are, at least in terms of true hardware interoperability. And that's the only way I can explain how I've charged hundreds, if not thousands of times now on various public chargers and had little to no issue, whereas people using the same exact chargers are running into issue after issue after issue, even when running the same car as me, in theory running the same payment app as me. Why am I not having issues, but they are? So there's some other breakdown happening that's not an interoperability issue. So I think having that automated integration, we're already seeing that with EVgo, right? The auto charge. We see it with Electrify America. Their auto charge enabled EVs are more reliable on their network than the ones that are using outside apps or whatnot. I would
I would
encourage
say
everybody to watch
I
this. Alex, the EV buyer's guide. He just posted a video about this, and his focus was kind of on that interoperability and concerns about the reliability. Um, but yeah, when you Electrify America basically claimed that Ford was at fault for their initial reliability. And I know that there was an aspect of that that's true, because Ford set up their Ford Pass and you had to toggle between in your app, and when you're setting up your payment, if you're on the wrong payment, then it's going to try to make you pay as a non-member. And so there were some integration issues with the app, but not necessarily interoperability issues as far as CCS as a standard is concerned. So I think a lot of this concern about how reliable are these chargers going to be moving forward, I think it's overblown a little bit. As long as we get to the point where the payment readers are reliable, the apps are reliable, and the users are experienced enough with the format and the payment options that they're not running into issues, I think we're going to see a skyrocketing improvement in reliability across all the networks.
I mean, I've definitely seen that with EVgo on this last trip. We defaulted to them in a couple of places. You know, once you get into the cities, it starts to get a bit janky with older hardware, and it's not as easy to get a charge because you have locals and rideshare and everything else vying for the limited 3 or 4 stalls. EVgo came in clutch at least 2, probably 3 times with the new hardware, and not across both of them, Delta and Signet, 350 kilowatt stations, just auto charge within maybe 20 seconds. You know, straight off to the races. The charge curve was perfect, done in 20 minutes before we could get back from the bathroom. You know, this is quick stuff, and exactly what we see in, you know, folks like Brian's videos where he's plugging in the Model Y. You know, him and his family are taking longer than the car to charge. And again, you know, this is like, I mean, that's, you know, not the exact comparable example, because, you know, it's still, you know, it's EVgo, it's a third-party network, but a lot of those advantages, as you kind of pointed out, that, you know, we see Tesla owners loving, because, you know, of course you would love plugging in, everything happening in the background, you can go and do your business. You know, it's all that vertical integration, and it's you know, it's not an exact comparison, but if VW, you know, EA was only charging Volkswagen ID4s and, you know, an Audi e-tron, you know, you've only got to validate 3 or 4 models, do a heavy dose of testing, and you're also, you know, that's not even the same thing, because they're not making the chargers, they're not making the software, you know, but it's closer. You'd have to assume that the reliability and the general sentiment towards any network that was then baked into the vehicles and the software as well would have much more, you know, success, and would have less of these dramatic, you know, blowouts. And again, it's, you know, a lot of these things, I think it's also, they're overblown. You know, we definitely ran into, just as anecdotal observation, you know, heading west, once we left Ohio, started to hit Indiana, Illinois, all the way over to Minnesota, derated stations were much more common. Now, we did find a few more stalls, started to get up to 6-8, which is a nice kind of number that's comparable to something like a supercharger. But, you know, it was much more common then to hit 90, you know, 80 kilowatts. And again, you just kind of, you know, you go to the store, you do your stuff. That never has been a deal breaker for me. If I'm getting up anywhere close to 3 figures, I'm pretty happy. But again, you know, these are different levels of problem, and we're going to see all of these things coming back again. You know, these will be things that we'll have with supercharger access. You know, and not just for me. You know, forget me not being able to necessarily access it and get full whack. It's you know, F-150 Lightning owners not being able to get close to the station, or blocking 3 stalls, or there's a bunch of stuff on the ground that needs to get figured out that seems to get kind of jettisoned along the you know, hyperbolic excitement of we can get to superchargers.
I think your experience in the i5 is super important, right? Like, and you know, anybody who's planning to use the superchargers really needs to look at that Magic Dock experience. So
You're telling me I have to stop at more Magic Docks tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I only have 2 in California.
Well, I'm adopting a Pokemon kind of mentality to it. You know, we have 9. I'm going to try and collect them all. So we'll see how we go.